Hey everyone, I think this is going to be the first video I upload to a channel. I'm not expecting this to get many views. Uh, More so hoping that someone stumbles across this video if they're interested in the topic. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of consciousness and why the existential dilemma of finding meaning in one's own life and bearing that responsibility. I just want to talk a little bit about why that might be occurring nowadays. I was watching a HealthyGamerGG podcast recently, in which he was talking about the default mode network. And the way he gave a good analogy of this is that imagine a deer in the woods and it's searching for food. And it searches for one bush, goes to a bush, tries to find some berries or whatever the hell the deer eats. Doesn't find any. Goes to another bush. No berries on that bush either. And let's say that repeats like a lot. The deer isn't gonna stop and go, am I bad at finding berries? Am I being a bad deer? Bad deer. Am I not doing what I should be doing? Am I not doing this properly? You know, all these self-referential thoughts. That doesn't happen with a deer. The deer's just going to keep looking, and if it doesn't find berries, it's going to die. So that's just the nature of that. You know, that's just how that animal exists. And with humans, we don't do that. After a few of those bushes, we might, as HealthyGamerGG was saying, we end up in this self-referential thought. Like I said, am I doing something wrong? Am I looking in the wrong places? Am I a bad berry finder? You know, but let's extrapolate that a little bit to other scenarios. You're searching for a job. Keep getting turned down. Is it me? Do I not have the qualities to work in these capacities? You know, things of that nature. And I think that the initial purpose of self-consciousness, metacognition, I guess from an evolutionary standpoint, is to correct that type of behavior. So we'll look at animals that don't have this self-referential. Well, let's get into a whole other debate about this, about if they do, but let's assume they don't, just for the sake of argument. Or we could just even leave animals out, right? Let's just stick with humans, something I'm certain of. Because I don't know what goes on inside an animal's head. I can just make observations from the outside. Same thing with people, but if we keep messing up and we're not able to correct that behavior, then we die. If we can't find food, we die. If we can't attract a mate, we are unable to pass on our genes. We are unable to keep a legacy going. We are unable to keep our species alive. There's a certain utility to being able to see where one lacks. And the only way one can do such a thing is to have self-referential thought. To be able to look at oneself and say, I'm not doing this very well. But this comes with a price. The price is that in our modern day, we can go to the store and get food. We walk down to a store. You know? Most people have some sort of shelter. There are systems in place to help people when they're in a distraught states of mind. Homeless shelters, When someone gets hurt, they go to a hospital. Um, there's this social network set up so that when things aren't working, there's something to fall back on. Certainly that's not the case for all people in the world, but I suppose I'm talking more about Western societies. I live in the US, so I guess I'll keep it here, this argument. But the purpose of metacognition in the grand sense is to keep you alive. But what happens when all these things that we used to critically think about, all these things that our metacognition was serving? How can I find food better? How can I find a mate? Where am I going to live? When these aren't everyday problems anymore, what do we have left to think about? I think metacognition serves for survival. But when all your survival needs are constantly being met, some people get stuck in that type of thinking, get stuck in that default mode network. And when that happens, and you already have everything you need, what are you going to be thinking about? Your brain's going to be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And what's going to happen when that occurs? We create our own problems. We overthink. We get anxious about things that we shouldn't be anxious about. Plenty of people have that experience where they know that their anxieties are ridiculous, but it still bothers them. You can't get out of it. Anxiety in the same way serves a purpose to keep you alive. Anxious about where you're going to find your next meal. You get anxious about your future. Where am I going to sleep tonight? What do we get anxious about now? Oh, I'm going to go to a party and I don't know if anyone's going to drop my cup. I don't know if anyone's going to talk to me, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to perform at this job. It's all self-referential. It's to keep us alive. It's to keep us overcoming things, overcoming problems, finding solutions. But when all our survival needs are met, what are we overcoming? What's left to figure out? Certainly not all people deal with this issue. I think people that tend to focus more on the meaning of things, the meaning of their life, what their purpose is, probably struggle with this issue a little bit more. Not that people that don't think about this don't have self-referential thought, but it's probably of a different nature. But the purpose of self-consciousness and metacognition seems to have been skewed. That's why Sartre talks about being responsible for our own lives, bearing the burden of responsibility to create our own meaning. It's a really heavy burden. And that's only a burden that one has to bear when they're not struggling to survive. And when consciousness first arrived in humans, I might be wrong about this, I think it's roughly 10,000 years ago, things weren't good. And we live in one of the best times in the world now. A lot of people fail to realize that. And it makes you think, did people in the past struggle with meaning in their life? Something to think about. Regardless of religious systems and beliefs and things of that nature. How much did these people worry about what they were doing, how things amounted? Getting anxious about interactions with people, feeling inadequate. You should feel inadequate if you can't find food, because you're going to die if you don't find food. So that utility of that type of thinking really can propel a species forward. Or it's an individual, but you know, a species is just made up of individuals. So yeah, I just thought this was an interesting topic. Maybe some of you will find this useful in some way, something to chew on. I'm certain this video won't get too many views, but for whoever does watch this, I hope it provides you with some clarity. You know, we need to remember that this mechanism of consciousness has been twisted a little bit, and we can't be so hard on ourselves. You know, there's a function to it, but when its initial function, survival, is already being met, you got to give a little leeway to the severity of these thoughts, the impact these types of thoughts can have on us. And we need to remember we're only human. No one's perfect. We'll always be able to look at ourselves and find flaws if we're honest with ourselves. Other people will always look at us and be able to see our deficiencies. But we need to remember that we're never going to be perfect. The most important thing, truly, from an evolutionary perspective, purely, is to just stay alive. Have food, water, shelter. I think with humans you can make the argument to have people. We're extremely social beings. Even a hermit is defined in relation to his lack of other. There's no way to get away from it. Just the nature of our existence. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. And don't be so hard on yourself. Think about the things that you're worrying about. Do they really matter? Only you can answer that. That's the hardest part. But trust yourself.